Hey, what's up? This is Odolena from Odolena Digital, and today we are talking about a book that I read recently called 12 Rules of Life by Jordan Peterson. Welcome to my channel. Be sure to subscribe. Every Sunday I come up with a new video. I work for Google, however everything that I say in this channel is completely my own perspective of things, my personal space. The 12 Rules of Life, it became a really successful book. It was sold in multi-million copies, made Jordan Peterson a millionaire from a Canadian professor in university. He became this world star that's speaking everywhere, invited, constantly traveling the world. So the book is called 12 Rules of Life, an antidote to chaos. And I think this is why it became so popular, since a lot of us right now, we are feeling a lot of the consequences of 20th century, a lot of the consequences after certain rules of society were accepted and broken, and it feels like a sense of chaos. There is a lot of uncertainty in political space, a lot of uncertainty in financial state after the 2008 crash. Also the advance of technology. I talked in my previous video, Homo Deus and Sapiens. There is a lot of sense of there is tragedy across the corner, there is chaos, and we seem to not be able to cope up with. So this is how I explain actually the success of this book. It's divided into 12 sections, and it's not a self-help book. First of all, this book is not the typical rules of life or the typical rules of success that you might have seen from other self-help genre. He is going very deep into philosophy, into psychology. He's very well read, very educated. He's bringing a lot of examples from the Bible, from literature and human thought, philosophy particularly. So it's a pretty interesting and deep read, I would say. It's not an easy book. So let's go through the rules. So rule number 1 is standing up straight with your shoulders back. So he brings into examples from nature that lobsters, when they win a battle against another lobster, they stand up straight and they have a lot of serotonin. And serotonin is this chemical that makes you feel powerful, that makes you stand up straight with your shoulder back. And actually this is kind of giving a signal to your brain that you are a winner. It's important how you stand, how you appear in society, because even if your situation, let's say, is not a winning one right now, standing up straight may help you to actually overcome the downside with which you are. With which I would tend to agree. I think that the pose, like how you stand up straight, that's why exercising, yoga and that kind of physical exercise is so good for you. It's just because it helps you to stand up straight, to be more confident. Even positions that you can take once you have to stand up, or maybe you have to give a talk or a presentation, I advise you to do some kind of power poses. So maybe put your hand on your hip or something like this, even for a short moment before it. And I feel myself sometimes even unconsciously doing it. When I feel a bit uncomfortable, I would put my hand like this. It's really weird. It might look a bit weird in the beginning or feel a bit weird, but believe me, it does help. Rule number 2, treat yourself like someone who you are responsible for helping. So he argues that a lot of times people would completely neglect themselves and not take the right medication, not looked after themselves, over their health, their finances. However, they would do everything to save a little dog or cat or a pet they have, even a fish. And somehow this kind of in his opinion, rooted into the Bible. Humans are unworthy. The animals, they are innocent because they don't have self-consciousness. Therefore, they are worthy of love. And this is something you would hear a lot from animal lovers, kind of like the ones that are a little bit, I would say, the pathological animal lovers, the ones that are hoarding animals, the ones that are a little bit obsessed, and they would say that animals deserve love and people are evil, so they don't deserve any love. So we should all love the animals. Not gonna go in that way, but you should treat yourself as if you are a pet, as if you are a lovely, cute puppy that needs help. And in a way, like, treat yourself or as a child or as someone who is worth receiving help and who needs some kind of support. Looking after your health, doing the things that you should be doing, if you want, let's say, to binge on alcohol, like think about, like, was that something that you would like your child to do, or your animal pet, if you don't like people? This is a pretty obvious rule, but people keep forgetting the fact that we should first look after ourselves, and this is how we can help others. Then rule number 3, make friends with people who mean the best for you. Avoiding being the victim or the martyr who wants to save this person who is drowning, and you want to be Mother Teresa. See that person that's been in desperate state for years and years. I mean, they are in deep shit, let's say, and you're trying to take them out of the shit, but what happens if you go in the shit yourself? Who you surround yourself with, this is who you become. You're the average of the 5 people around you. So totally agree with this rule. Then comes another one, which is also great, is comparing yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Because in the past, maybe you wouldn't be able to see the life of the rich. Maybe you will hear about it or see some movies or something like this. But now you have like Instagram and social media and everything. And it's so easy to kind of think of your life as being less important or less successful. It's always someone who is doing much better. It can make you feel that you are actually worthless again. So avoiding being this feeling of worthlessness, of chaos in your head. And just comparing by who you were, let's say last week, last month, last year, 5 years ago, and you always feel good. And not comparing yourself with someone who is way ahead of you or someone who is way behind you as well. Because sometimes people kind of soothe themselves because, well, I'm better than the worst. Well, that doesn't mean anything. Are you better than what you were yesterday? This is what's the important part. Rule number 5. Do not let your children do anything that makes you dislike them. This rule was kind of a little bit too much in the book. It was a bit, it felt to me a bit of like a personal annoyance with spoiled brat type of children. He talked a little bit about his own children and how he was kind of able to also educate other families' children. It just felt a bit strange, but the whole idea was that when you are a parent, you should kind of have this mix of being strict and also being good to your child. And in many cases, parents now avoid conflict with their children because they're so afraid that they're not gonna love them or they're gonna traumatize them, and they allow them absolutely anything. And they turn into these actually unlikable little kids, which none of their peers like, and also none of the other adults, and maybe not even their parents like. And this is a sad place to be for a child, and it's a sad place for this child when it becomes adult. It has like a lot of lecture on parenting there, which I'm not gonna comment. Everybody has their own ways, but to be honest, I've seen cases where people will neglect this rule, and usually it's the child that suffers at the end. Setting your house in order, and rule number 6. He talks a little bit about the connection between your inside and outside world, that it's very important that you gain control on your environment. So for example, last week I was going through some stressful time in Google. I was quite affected by a reorg. Essentially there was nothing to be worried about, but for a few days there was a lot of uncertainty. So I was feeling really kind of crazy, all over the place, chaotic. What I ended up doing is actually cleaning some stuff. And this made me feel I'm getting back control on the situation. And this is, I think, the mental thing why you have to keep order of your things. So if you have a chaos in your house, it's very difficult to fix anything else outside, because, you know, the messy, ugly house, a lot of hoarded stuff, this speaks already about the mental state of a person, right? If you see the room of someone and it's just reeking and it's terrible and hasn't been cleaned forever, it will mean something for that person, right? Having some order within your own environment brings order in yourself, which helps you bring order in other things that you're doing. Pursue what's meaningful. Here he gets into a lot of philosophy, and to be honest, he lost me a little bit on this chapter. The point was that life is not meant to be a happy, harmless way of being. It's meant to be a bit tough. And when it's a bit tough, we get ourselves into shape. we become lazy and complacent otherwise. If you haven't watched my video about Kobe Bryant, this is what he says about the NBA. When he went into the NBA, everybody who was there just because of the money, he could see why they're not performing so well. They became complacent, they became lazy, and he was there not because of the money, because he was pursuing something which was meaningful to him. He was not pursuing the material rewards, just the financial stability. And that made him actually much better player and much more well off than everybody else. Just because he was with the mindset that he was pursuing something meaningful. He wanted to be the best player. He wanted to be the next Michael Jordan. When you pursue something meaningful, you end up, of course, you will have harder time. It's more difficult than pursuing something expedient or something less meaningful, but essentially you end up better. Especially when it comes to the truth about yourself. Very often we are masters in deceiving ourselves, giving ourselves excuses, making ourselves feel comfortable just by lies, and also making the other feel comfortable when they shouldn't be comfortable. So when someone is asking you like, oh, do I look well in this dress? And you say, yeah, you look great, but they don't. You're not giving them a favor, you know? Sometimes you just have to tell the truth, and it might be harder for the other person. This is again like the rule with the children. You might be avoiding a lot of time conflict with the children, but essentially you are making them weaker, less likable, less social, and it's bad for them. So it's the same with adults. Like when you just don't tell the truth, essentially problems escalate and build up and build up and build up, and at some point it's too late already. Assume the person you are speaking to knows something that you don't. Everybody tries to convince the other one that they are right. There's this book called The Righteous Mind. It's super interesting read. It's again about this, why politics and religion is making people polarized. And one way to fight polarization is that you can assume that the other person knows something you don't, that they're coming from a different condition. Actually, Charlie Munger, if you watch my video about Charlie Munger's book, Poor Charlie's Almanac, that's what he says, is that you are arguing against someone, you have to know the opponent point of view, and you should be able to defend it better than the opponent can. Precise in your speech. This also relates to not to lie, again, to be able to express yourself correctly. Being precise in anything is kind of bringing you forward. Essentially, there should be one moment where you have to make a decision between good and evil, and being precise over time, it helps you hone your skills in making differentiation. Don't bother children who are skateboarding. So this is again on children and education of young adults. So he's very passionate about this topic. He has 2 children himself, now both of them grown up, but he has a lot of examples of their childhood and of things that he had observed. And I think like people who have been parents tend to do that because they see a lot of things. Like I don't pay attention to that kind of things that much. But I can see parents particularly notice a lot. And for example, skateboarding, so discouraging people from skateboarding, kind of putting little obstacles so they don't use an area for skateboarding, making playgrounds too safe. The whole meaning of life is that you shouldn't be too safe. If it's too safe, it doesn't bring pleasure, it's no longer fun, it doesn't make us excited. And creating these kind of ultra safe environments especially for the children, is educating them into a risk-averse mode. You know, parents now, they have cameras all over the house, and they observe their children on a screen, like, you know, like in a prison. To me, it sounds a bit scary, a bit weird, and a bit over the top. In a way, it makes these children normalized to being observed, to constantly being corrected, to not to have any autonomy at all. Of course, like, you have to keep them safe, but also what are you teaching them essentially? That risks have to be always avoided. And everything that's meaningful in life, again, if you want to pursue meaningful things, not expedient things, you will have to take also some risks. So it's risky to move a country, it's risky to start a job, it's risky to start a business, it's risky to go into a relationship. But essentially these are the things that will essentially make you feel better about yourself. If you only avoid risks, then your life is not that great. There is this Russian song which I really love, and it's about to have or not to have. If you don't have an aunt, then she will not die. If you don't have a girlfriend, then you won't lose her to your friend. And if you haven't lived, then you're not gonna die. So decide whether you want to have or you don't want to have. And then finally, this is my favorite rule, so pet a cat when you see one on the street. The small things in life. That of course there is all these difficulties, the hardships, the ugliness, the unfairness of this world. Nobody said it's gonna be fair. All the things that are kind of mentioned in the book, like how difficult our being is, and it's no wonder that a lot of people end up in hospitals, and he's a psychologist himself, so he has dealt with so many of them. But actually appreciating the small things in life, the small spontaneous pretty things, like, I don't know, seeing a cute animal and petting a little dog or a cat on the head, or hearing some nice piece of music, or seeing some flowers. It's, you know, appreciating the view this evening. They actually make the whole existence feel better, and essentially they are good for your mental state. This is why maybe a lot of offices, including Google, have adopted dog policies. So they actually allow dogs to come in the office, and I pet all of them, every single one of them. So I'm really good with this rule. Overall, this book is a good read. Also, you might not agree with all of the rules, so some of them to me felt a bit more vague. There was moments where he kind of watered down some of the rules and went into too much philosophy. Overall, these are all good things for you. I don't think that any of the rules doesn't make sense, or any of the rules is something that you shouldn't do and will do you great harm. On the opposite, I believe that actually following some of these rules can lead to a better, more meaningful, happier, and actually more satisfying being on this planet Earth. Thanks a lot for watching, subscribe to my channel, and I'll be back with a new video next week.